I'm Stephen Neely, certified financial planner with Fortress Capital Advisors. In today's video, we're going to talk about why people often make dumb money choices. We'll discuss 3 psychological biases that might be holding you back, and then I'm going to give you some ways that you can overcome them. I remember when I first got into the financial services industry, and I naively believed that all you had to do was present people with facts and logic, and that was really all you needed to do to change their behaviors and help them to get good outcomes. And then reality came crashing down, and I learned real quick that nobody makes decisions like that, right? You could have all the facts and logic that you want, but it's often not enough to move people. And when you read more of the literature on psychology, what you find out is that, people really use emotions to make decisions, and then they use facts and logic afterwards to justify those decisions. When you look around online on YouTube or TikTok for financial advice, usually you tend to find these hacks or maybe like strategies or specific investments like, okay, if you want to get ahead, you need to be doing this investment. And, it's usually real estate or gold or crypto or something. And look, those might be fine investments, but what I found is that a much more realistic path to success is simply avoiding unforced errors. And, you'll see that's a common theme that I come back to time and again. And one way we can do this is to learn about the psychological biases that we're prone to, and then coming up with ways that we can avoid to, fall victim to them. So the first place to look is an area called behavioral finance. And it's basically a branch of behavioral psychology. It's a really interesting field and probably one of the more interesting topics that I get to learn about in this profession. And so what behavioral finance is, it combines psychology and economics to understand how individuals make financial decisions. And they often are able to do this in an experimental setting with a control group. And what they found has really impacted how we've come to view decision-making and human behavior. And it challenges the traditional economic assumption that people are rational actors that sort of make decisions in a Spock-like manner. And instead, what they found is that, there's all kinds of psychological factors, such as emotions and cognitive biases and social influences and so on, that actually impact financial behavior. And so the first one we're going to talk about today is something called the halo effect. And in this bias, we will either under or overvalue some options based on completely arbitrary factors that we find attractive. Simply put, we see a halo around certain options just because of how those options are presented and not necessarily based on any kind of facts or due diligence. A brief history about this. So there was a researcher named Edward Thorndike, and he conducted experiments with military officers, and he asked them to evaluate their subordinates based on various attributes such as physical appearance and intelligence and leadership skills. And what he found is that high ratings in one area tended to correlate with high ratings in other areas, even when there was no logical connection, which suggests that an overall positive impression of a person could halo their other traits, which of course leads to biased evaluations. I think anybody who's ever worked in any kind of organization can see this going on when it comes to evaluations and promotions. But, for our purposes, the halo effect isn't just limited to personal evaluations, but they've found in further studies that it extends to products and brands and even investment. For us, if we care about personal financial choices, a couple of areas I can think of where this impacts people is number one. Let's say you are searching for a financial advisor, and just most people are going to tend to go, okay, I know Merrill Lynch, I know Edward Jones or Morgan Stanley, and these brands are going to have a halo around them. And the reality is there might be some independent advisor out there who actually better suits your needs, but you might not even look for them because they don't have that halo around them. Look, obviously I'm biased. Maybe they don't better suit your needs, but the point is because of the halo effect, if you don't actually do your due diligence and consider all of your options, you might be worse off. A second place where I could see this with personal finance is just in banking in general. Everybody knows Bank of America or Chase or Citi, and those are brands with a halo and they're trusted. But if you're searching for a loan or a new credit card or anything in personal finance, you might be better served by your local credit union down the street, but you may not even consider them because that doesn't have this halo around it like, Bank of America might. So how do we avoid this? Well, before you make a decision on anything, step back and ask yourself, okay, am I considering all of my options, or have I only considered those that, have this sort of halo around them because I trust some type of brand and I haven't considered, anything else that really isn't a name brand option? All right, the second bias is something called fast thinking. And under the influence of fast thinking, humans are kind of primed to act now without having any checkpoints. We tend to cut corners and make decisions quickly, which, by the way, actually works out pretty well for humans most of the time, and there's very good reason for this. Let me give you a bit of background about this bias. The concept of fast thinking is actually called System 1 thinking, and this was extensively researched by a couple of psychologists. One's named Daniel Kahneman, and his partner was Amos Tversky. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not actually sure. And these guys came up with two modes of thinking, System 1 thinking and System 2. So System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional. Most decisions are made that way. And then System 2 is slower, more deliberate, and logical. And, System 1 helps us navigate everyday life efficiently. Just think about how many thousands of pretty much meaningless decisions you make every day. And if you sat down and you deliberated every single one of those decisions, you would literally get nothing done. And so that's great in general. But when it comes to making big decisions, you have to avoid System 1 thinking. That often happens even when we make investing decisions. And let me give you an example of how this kind of works. So Kahneman and Tversky, they set up an experiment where they gave people a series of math problems. So one of the math problems was you have a bat and a ball. And in total, the bat and the ball cost $1.10. Now, the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? All right. Most people quickly, just in your mind, you're going to say 10 cents. That's my default reaction as well. But the correct answer is actually 5 cents. And so let's think this through, right? So like I said, normally people are going to be like, so most people are going to think, okay, if the bat costs $1 more than the ball, you're going to just think automatically $1 and I've got $1.10. So the ball has to cost 10 cents, but that's not really it, right? You need to slow down and actually think about the problem. The key here is more than, right? It didn't say the bat costs $1. It says it costs $1 more. And so think about it. If the bat costs $1 and the ball costs 10 cents, $1 minus 10 cents is 90 cents. The correct answer is the bat has to cost $1.05. $1.05 minus 5 cents is $1, right? That's how you get to the answer, but you had to slow down and actually think about that. And so how can we protect ourselves from this? Well, I think in a lot of ways, anytime you're making a decision about a major purchase or any type of investment, you need to slow down and consider, have you weighed all of the facts? I don't know what your social media feeds look like, but for mine, I'm constantly bombarded with offers about some type of investment strategy or business strategy. And every single time it's always, you need to act now. You have to act now. And the truth is, all of these marketing companies, they are master manipulators. They've done all the psychological research and they know how to push our buttons. But the reality is there's almost no purchase or investment decision that you need to make immediately. Here again, slow down, consider if you've had all of the facts. Number 3, future versus present self bias. In this one, we think of ourselves as two different people and we value our present self more than our future self. We tend to view our future self as someone else, and we don't recognize that our other self doesn't need the same things that our present self does. And what happens is we tend to make financial decisions that benefit us now in the present, giving us instant gratification. And I think we see that, right? Anytime you want to splurge to make a luxury purchase or, have a really fancy dinner and do all these things instead of, say, saving for your retirement. This bias is one of the number one reasons that most people don't have enough retirement savings, right? They fail to see that their needs in the future are going to be different. And look, it's very human. It's easy to beat people up about this, but the reality is our brains are simply wired this way. And so what can you do to kind of overcome this bias? I think a lot of the advice on this that you see from financial planners out there is pretty good. And generally, they recommend strategies like setting up automatic savings plans and then creating a clear, tangible goal for the future. This could be as simple as every time I get paid, I'm going to put $500 into my brokerage account and just invest it in an S&P 500 index fund. You would be shocked at how fast this grows, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you probably hit $100,000. Which starts to become a meaningful number the more and more you let that compound. I really like the advice you see from some NBA players where they say, hey, I'm going to pay myself first, and maybe that's X percentage. So, this is going to depend on what's your goal. Do you want to get to $100,000 in savings or whatever it is? And you kind of back out, okay, how long is it going to take me to get there? And then what can I afford to pay myself first, and then the rest of it is going to automatically go into this savings. Because if you set yourself up where you just have to pinch pennies on everything and you don't ever allow yourself to have any instant gratification, you're just going to fail. It's the same with dieting or anything else that just takes an incredible amount of willpower and discipline. You're just going to fail after a while, right? You might stick with it for 3 months or 6 months, but eventually you're just going to say, hey, this is too hard, and forget it. And so that's where I think, that strategy of pay myself and then save the rest, it's out of sight and out of mind. That's something that most people can succeed at over the long term. Okay, that's it. If you like the video, hit subscribe. I post weekly on retirement and investing. Thanks for watching. See you next time.